this is Brian Rowe with Mythic MTG Tech number 190, doing a deck tech for Sygg, River Cutthroat, called Sygg with Swords. This has been a little while in the making. Right after announcing that it would be out in 24 hours, I lost my voice and ended up sick. And then I ended up out of town traveling. I was in Austin last week, but I'm back here in Seattle and super excited to get back to videos. Let's jump in. This is not a deck for the lighthearted. This is a competitive deck. It's about an 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. It does not have combos, but it does contain a pretty good amount of control. It really is designed around Sygg the River Cutthroat, putting him out, doing a little bit of damage each turn, drawing some extra cards, and controlling the board. This is the type of deck that I pull out when the table is more spiky, less casual, and there's often combo decks that need to be kept at bay so that we can have an interactive game. The budget on this deck does not make this a budget deck. This is about a $2,000 deck. It has some of the most expensive, most powerful blue cards out there: Mana Drain, Force of Will, Underground Sea. Underground Sea is one of those cards that just instills fear in your opponents. It is a powerful card. When you put it out on the table or when you go to fetch it, you will get hate. So keep that in mind. At the end of this video, I've got some alternatives to drop about $800 off the cost of this deck just by changing out 5 cards. I do understand most people playing EDH do it on a budget, and you can still make this deck very competitive without those top cards. The deck rotates around Sygg. Put a sword on Sygg the River Cutthroat, and he starts doing 3 damage, and you're drawing extra cards every turn. If people are attacking each other politically, you're also going to draw cards whenever they're doing damage to each other. I've got Batterskull and Umezawa's Jite in here as honorable mentions to swords. They work extremely well. Batterskull may even be the best of the swords, even though it's not a sword. You need to gain life with this deck in order to stay alive. You will be the target at the table if you bring this to a more casual table. I am a big fan of getting the War and Peace sword right away so that you can start gaining life, so that when you become the target, you've got a chance to live for a while. Other people really enjoy Feast and Famine in a 1v1 especially environment. It is probably the most powerful 1v1. Sword of Fire and Ice gives you a lot of control and some extra cards. Body and Mind is the sword that has probably come back to haunt me the most times. Hitting somebody and then figuring out their reanimator deck can really cause you problems, but it has also worked out as an alternative win condition after other people have picked up several hundred life through weird combos. Sword of Light and Shadow is probably the weakest in this deck, although I really like to have a way to get back Snapcaster Mage or the few creatures that I have in the deck, and Jite is just better than all the rest because it doesn't have to connect with your opponent. It allows you to control the board. For lands, I've got a lot of different utility lands in here. These are 3 of my favorite. If I'm building a black deck, don't leave the bog out. It's really nice to have a way to control your opponent's graveyard, especially when you're using that milling sword. Palomar Depths is very, very nice. It gives you a little bit of planning for your next few turns, and the Palace in the Clouds is great against land destruction. Also, if you need to trigger landfall, which doesn't hit this deck very often, this is a nice way to be able to do it though. Got your standard black, blue multi-lands. I put in as many multi-lands as I can while still having some basic lands. Usually I try to run about 10 to 15 basic lands in a commander deck. If you'll notice, I'm only using the Polluted Delta to fetch. You could make this deck more competitive by putting in the other fetch lands. It just feels a little bit wrong to me flavor-wise to be able to fetch basics that aren't actually in your commander's colors. That's a personal preference though. If you go more spiky, I understand putting those other fetch lands in. They're definitely more powerful. Don't leave out basic lands, and put in utility lands that are going to help you control the table. Strip Mine and Tectonic Edge are both extremely useful. I like adding a few cycle lands also, so that late game, when you don't need those lands, they turn into real cards. Ancient Tomb is great with swords because it really jumps you up on the curve. You're able to get that sword out a turn earlier and get it equipped a turn earlier. Cavern of Souls is also a must include in almost any EDH deck. Just helps you deal with those control decks. And Urborg is so reasonably priced right now, I would pick them up. It's a great EDH staple. There are several multi-use enchantments in here. My most fun one here is Standstill. It's the least competitive of them, but it lets everybody draw extra cards. It's a way to make friends early on before you really turn on the heat of controlling the board. Bloodchief Ascension has probably won me more games than any of these other cards. It's a massive life gain once it's online, and it is incredible, huge amounts of damage. Phyrexian Arena is a great way to draw cards. Bitter Blossom is a very, very powerful competitive early game card. It's also combos so well with swords. It means you're always going to have a creature to put those swords on. And Treachery is just the best control magic in EDH. There are some cards in this deck that are on the suicidal side. I like to draw extra cards, even if it means losing a few games. Dark Confidant and Ad Nauseam, I would use at my own risk. These are not cards for the faint of heart. Got a lot of interesting instance in here. Capsize is the grindiest of the win conditions here, returning all your opponent's permanents. Even if you're not gonna win though with Capsize, it's great spot removal. Moonlight Bargain is a draw card that is often overlooked. I like that it's instant speed and that you can often just pick up all 5 cards, take the 10 life, it's okay. We have some incredible creatures in this deck. They're all utility-based creatures that do something else. None of them are just damage. Massacre Worm is a great board wipe. The Grave Robber over here is often missed in people's decks. Really nice with that mill sword so that you can grab the really good stuff that you put in individuals' graveyards. Blood Gift Demon is a safer version of Dark Confidant with a really nice sized body. Wormcoil Engine is in here because you need the life gain in this deck. You will be a target. And Phyrexian Metamorph has got me out of more trouble than I can count. Great card. Vendilion Click is for those combo players specifically. It's also a wizard, works really well with Snapcaster Mage. A second idea with your Cavern of Souls is to name wizards in this deck. Really good tech that is underplayed is Dark Imposter for more casual games. If the games are going longer, the exile ability matters a lot. On the super competitive games, Notion Thief can win you through massive card advantage several games. This guy is incredible. 2 of my favorite skill-intensive cards are in this deck, Fact or Fiction and Intuition. Choose someone at the table, let them deal with the problems of choosing between the cards that you go get. Now, this could be made more competitive by adding in combos that work with especially Intuition. This is not a reanimator deck though, so I like to grab those things that are difficult choices for my opponent and then let them impale themselves by making bad choices. Got a lot of different sorceries in here. Most of them just draw cards. A few of them are tutors in order to go through and get the spot removal or the particular board wipe that you need. Praetor's Grasp has to be my favorite though of the tutors. Going through your opponent's deck and grabbing something to use against them or grabbing a crucial piece of their combo really is a lot of fun. Also, don't forget the early game cantrips like Ponder when putting a deck like this together. Being able to get through to your mid-game cards and shuffle away your late-game cards is very, very useful in a deck like this. For board control, this both has board wipes, Black Sun Zenith being my favorite of those because it deals with regeneration, it deals with indestructible. I've also got Damnation in here because I just really like the artwork. Chainer's Edict, very good, more competitive card. Nice ability to remove your opponent's creature even if they've got hexproof, and the flashback can be relevant in grindier games. Cyclonic Rift is probably the most powerful removal card in here. The overload on it is just nuts in EDH. There's a little bit of ramp in this deck. Soul Ring and Mana Vault just speed the deck up significantly, and Darksteel Ingot is another nice way to ramp that is not that vulnerable to destruction. Solemn Simulacrum could be in several of these different slides, but I've got it here because you can both carry a sword and ramps. Nice all-star for pretty much an EDH deck. My win conditions in this deck, outside of Sygg, are really Planeswalkers. I like to ultimate Planeswalkers. Yes, this is a grindy deck. Karn Liberated will usually get a concession. Jace the Mind Sculptor is probably the slowest of those wins. Jace Architect of Thought is usually the fastest of the wins, and seen as the least threatening. His third ability down here, being able to go through everyone's deck and grab something, is very powerful. Tamiyo, I thought would be a very strong win condition. She's a little bit slow. She usually just draws me a bunch of cards off of someone's tapped out army. There are a lot of counters in this deck. I tried to make the counters dual use. Yes, there's a traditional counterspell just out of nostalgia, but if I was going to upgrade it, I would definitely stick with the dual use counters. Overwhelming Intellect, everybody has a commander. It's nice to draw cards off of their commander. Pact of Negation is a force of will that people never see coming at a very reasonable price at that $20 to $30 range. Misdirection is very inexpensive right now and is often better than Force of Will. Cryptic Command is about to drop in price also because it's in Modern Masters 2. Pick them up before they shoot back through the roof. This is one of the only formats where Mana Drain is legal, so you might as well use it if you have it. And Forbid has to be the most mean of the counters. You can often lock out an entire table with enough card draw. Counterbalance and Sensei's Divining Top are once again in here just for fun. They're not that great in EDH, although if somebody's got a lower curve, you can often lock out some of those super spiky players. And Time Stop is the type of card that people often have to read. A quick tip on Time Stop, you can even play it during somebody's upkeep so that they don't end up getting a draw phase. That's pretty mean. I usually like to wait until they've got several things on the stack and then exile everything on the stack and move to the end of their turn. Now we're going into tips for how I would turn this into a more budget deck. Mana Drain is at the $275 range right now, and Glen Alundra Archmage is at about the $10 range. Very, very solid wizard that can hold a sword and often gets 2 counterspell uses. In the number 4 spot here, I've got Commandeer. Very, very nice alternative to Force of Will. If you've got the card advantage, you often get more value out of this card. I don't know who this altar is from, but it was one of the only high-res images I could find of Commandeer. If anybody knows who did the altar, I'm happy to give them credit in the comments. Very nice altar. The number 3 spot here, I've got Jace Beleren. When you drop Jace the Mind Sculptor, you become the target of the table. When you drop Jace Beleren, you often become people's friends. This is a way to turn the deck a little bit more casual. I definitely like this Jace in a more friendly game. Number 2 spot here for budget, consider the Shocklands. In EDH, you really don't need dual lands. Shocklands do just as well in 99% of the situations and save you a few $100s. Number 1 here, I've got a card that I'm probably actually going to add into the deck. It's Spelljack. Spelljack is extremely powerful. Counter someone's spell and then use it yourself later. It is as good as Cryptic Command in many, many situations and occasionally even better. Very nice card, especially if you can get up to that 6 mana pretty early. 2 cards that did not make this list because I made it several months ago that I'm looking at adding are Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise. Both are extremely reasonable right now. I would definitely consider adding them to any of your more competitive blue decks. This video was inspired by an article that I put together for Mox Boarding House. Mox Boarding House has agreed to let the fans choose a topic for next month. So if you head over to the article and add comments there, I will be choosing a topic out of those comments for next month. So if you really want to see a particular video done, leave it in the comments and you've got a shot at choosing a video. Also, Mox Boarding House has a giveaway currently for a Modern Masters 1 box. Whoever comes up with the best flavor text for Emrakul can win a box of Modern Masters 1. It has to be 15 words or less. I've been thinking about this for a while. I'm not sure what I would do. Probably something to do, though, with why everybody keeps bringing owls to class for show and tell. Thanks, this has been Brian Rowe with Mythic MTG Tech. Thank you to everybody who's over there on Patreon. The tokens for the channel are going out in the next week here. We've got a bunch of videos coming out. The next video is going to be over the cards that were not included in Modern Masters, so which cards you should be picking up on speculations because they are not being reprinted. I am also going to be out at Mox Boarding House this coming Saturday for a charity tournament that's out there. I'm actually judging some of the games, and then I will be spell slinging, giving away tokens, that type of stuff over at Mox Boarding House on Saturday. Take care. I look forward to seeing people out and about in the community.